Hey everybody, this is Bart Hansen for Crush Live Poker, and today we're going to take a look at another couple of hands here from day two of this main event in 2021 featuring Doyle Brunson. So we were in here the third level of day two, and the blinds were 800, 1600 with a 1600 chip ante. And you can see here that Doyle Brunson starts the hand with 132,000, which is just about 82 and a half big blinds, and he's going to bring it in here for a raise to 3,500. It gets folded all the way around to Jason Koon, who's a massive live tournament crusher in any facet of poker, and he's going to make the flat call on the button. I like this play. These guys are deep. The button is probably one of the only spots where you really do get to do a lot of flat calling because you don't really have to worry about getting squeezed by someone behind you through a 3-bet. Gets over to the small blind, and this guy, Karushami, he actually covers starting with 231,000, and he's going to call with 7-8 suited, and that's probably pretty close. I mean, if you have a guy in the big blind that's not going to be squeezing a lot, I could see calling, but it is very, very hard to play a suited connector here from out of position, especially against two winning players that aren't going to really bleed off a lot of chips. So we go to the flop, and it's 13,700. So the flop comes out King of Clubs, Queen of Hearts, Deuce of Hearts, and you can see here that Doyle with Ace Jack offsuit with the Jack of Hearts has flopped a gut shot here to a 10. Now he is going to make a continuation bet here of 7,000 into two people. The more multi-handed the pot is, the less you want to do a continuation bet, but he does have the gut shot to the Broadway nuts. He's got the Jack of Hearts. Also, this board really does favor him because most of the time, Kuhn and the other guy in the small blind aren't going to have kings or queens. That's going to be 3-bet off. Once in a while, you might run into like king, queen, but usually these guys are also going to be 3-betting ace, king. So if you don't have to worry about kings, queens, and ace, king, you can put a lot of pressure on your opponents, especially raising from early position like Doyle did. So Kuhn, who's flopped a flush draw, is going to make the call, and I also think that that's relatively standard here. Probably no reason to raise here in position for the reasons that we talked about. He doesn't have a ton of very strong hands. His draw also is not like a combo draw. I mean, it really is just a dry flush draw, so he makes the call. Also, if Doyle has missed with a hand like, say, ace-5 of clubs, he very well might just check the turn, and Kuhn can bet and just take it down. Obviously, the guy in the small blind gets out of the way, and now we go to the turn with the pot being 27,700. So a super action card here on the turn. It's the 10 of hearts, and that gives Doyle the Broadway nut straight, but it also gives Kuhn a flush. Now, Kuhn's flush is only 8 high, and Doyle is going to bet 15,500 here, which is just over half the size of the pot here on the turn. It's really close. I mean, I think that possibly if you didn't have a heart in it, you might check because it might skew your opponent to having more heart draws. With Doyle having the Jack of Hearts, it's probably pretty close. I think with the Ace of Hearts, Ace Jack with the Ace of Hearts, that becomes a bet here way more often because most of Kuhn's flushing types of hands, or a good portion of them, are going to be Ace X suited types of hands, like an Ace 3 of Hearts, something like that. So if you were to have the Ace of Hearts, it cuts his total combinations way, way down. When he does take this sizing, Kuhn just calls again. He doesn't want to open his stack up either. I mean, Doyle can also have some flushes here. He can have nut flushes, especially if he's opening any Ace X of Hearts type of hand. He could have like a King Jack of Hearts, King 9 of Hearts. You know, the 8 high flush really is just not that high of a flush right here. So I do like the call, play your position, and see what happens on the river. So we go to 5th Street with the pot being 58,700. So now the river brings out just a total brick. It's the 3 of clubs. And Doyle now decides to check the river, which is kind of an interesting play because obviously he felt like he was getting value, or he could get value on the turn. And he is going to get faced with a large bet here from Jason Koon. Kuhn's going to bet 41,000 into 58,700, and that is a big bet in tournament poker. And Doyle has a tough decision here because if he's wrong, his chip stack is going to go down from 106,000 to 65,000, or from 66 big blinds to 40 big blinds. Now, Jason Koon is a very, very capable player, and usually when you're in a spot like this, it's really good for you to have a heart in your hand. So Doyle here has one of the best combinations of Ace Jack with the Jack of Hearts because it just cuts down on the possible flushes that Kuhn can have in a spot like this. I also find it somewhat interesting here too that the texture of the board makes it really hard for someone to really be unpaired in a spot like this. Like if you take a look at the draws that aren't heart draws on the flop, it's primarily hands like Jack 10, Ace 10, 9-10 suited, something like that. Those all pair up on the turn. So the question is, would Jason Kuhn turn a hand like just 10x into a bluff here, or would he check it back? Perhaps Doyle took two shots at it and then he was going to give up. We don't know the answer to that, but that's probably the primary bluff that Kuhn might make here if he didn't think 10x had enough showdown value here at the end. So usually when your opponent is on a draw and their primary draws have missed, but they're paired and they might have showdown value against a line like Doyle has taken, and the person bets anyways, it kind of cuts down a lot on the bluffs. But I have to tell you, Kuhn is absolutely capable in a spot like this of turning something into a bluff. And with the Jack of Hearts here, I would have a very, very difficult time laying this one down. Obviously, it's a tournament. Chips lost are worth much more than chips gained. And Doyle Brunson, one of the most experienced live players in the history of poker, makes an incredible laydown again. This one might even be more incredible than the hand that we saw earlier in the week where he bet folded trip aces with ace king to a single check raise at the end. You got to give him a lot of credit. I don't know if I can make this laydown here in this spot. So on to the last hand we're going to take a look at here that Doyle Brunson played in this 2021 main event. And this comes from a few levels later on, 1,000, 2,000, with a 2,000 ante. So there's 5K in dead money out there. And you can see that obviously Doyle has lost some chips and he's working off right around a 16 big blind stack, which is pretty short at 32,000. And he makes an incredibly light open for a 9-handed table ace-3 offsuit. I think this is just a fold all day long and it's not even close. And I'm not going to mince words. I've given Doyle a lot of credit in the previous hands that I've reviewed, but I am absolutely not a fan of the way that he played this particular one in this spot. And it's going to get folded all the way around here to the big blind. Now, we don't know anything about the big blind, this guy, Mackenzie, but unless he was playing absolutely maniacal, I don't think that he's going to be this light with this shove. Mackenzie is going to shove, and I will point out here that Mackenzie started the hand with 79,000 or just about 40 big blinds. So when he shoves back over the top, if he were to lose, he is risking 40% of his stack because Doyle started with 32,000. So Doyle opens to 5K and Mackenzie puts Doyle all in. Now, here's the thing about tournament poker nowadays, too. People use a lot of small sizing. So if Doyle were to fold here, he would still have like 14 blinds. That is easily enough to reship over the top of a raise. He could just easily fold right now. He's going to have position over the next few hands. Obviously, he's got a bunch of fold equity if he open shove 13 or 14 blinds, but still a really good reship stack here as well. I just think that this is just a snap fold all day long. This is what I think Mackenzie's reshipping range here should be out of the big blind. The other thing to note is that the big blind is also incentivized to call. This, I think, is much different than if Mackenzie was, say, in the field and wanted to shut people out, or even if he was in the small blind and he wanted to knock the big blind out. With a lot of his medium strength hands, he can call. So you can see the range that I kind of gave him here, and I think it's even a liberal range, risking 40% of his stack. And unless he is really, really maniacal, like I said, and is playing like all kinds of hands, but I'd say 8s plus. I even gave him all the ace jack off, ace queen off, queen jack suited, king 10 and king jack suited. I mean, you still might not even find people doing that. Ace 10 suited and ace 5 suited, and of course, you know, all the big premium hands. I think this is a reasonable range. It consists of about maybe 8 to 9% of hands. And the thing is that you can see that ace-3 offsuit is just not doing that well. It's only 32% against this particular range. Now, Doyle, when he does face the shove, the pot is 40,800. It's 27,800 to call. He needs 40.5% equity here. He's getting just under 1.5 to 1. So you can see here with this hand, And with his given equity, this really should be a fold all day. And I do wonder if possibly fatigue might have set in to Doyle Brunson. Obviously, he's 88 years old. This was towards the end of day two. Maybe a little bit of frustration, something like that. But as good as some of those folds have been that we've gone over, here, I just think that this is just an insta fold. I certainly wouldn't have opened ace three off at a nine-handed table off of this stack. And if you're doing that, you're doing it because of the blocking properties of having an ace, and it's just a really, really easy fold. You can absolutely nurse short stacks. I mean, this is the whole thing about tournament poker, and some of the best tournament players are the guys that play the short stack well and do not make mistakes off of the short stack. But I've played in the main event at least 14 years, and I've seen some of this type of thing go on, especially coming back for dinner after day one. Funny enough, people eat a big meal after dinner and they come back and they're on not even that short of a stack and they just make a huge, huge mistake and they give away the rest of their chips. Just from the open in itself, I think maybe Doyle was getting a little bit tired. Again, we don't know. It's possible that Mackenzie could be just a total maniac, but in order for you to make this call, this guy's got to be shoving super, super wide, like at least 20% of all hands. In a situation like this, we'll pull up, say, 21% of hands where all the pairs, some of the midish suited connectors, all the suited aces, ace 10 off plus. And I think that we can all agree that this is much, much too wide of a range to reasonably give a guy who can just complete with playable hands in the big blind. So unfortunately for Doyle, Mackenzie showed up with ace queen suited, one of the hands that is most likely going to be a shove, and Doyle did not improve, and he was out of the 2021 main event.